Lando Norris crashes out in Q3. Danny Rick gets P4 and George Russell is very, very lost on the front row of the grid. Welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive. We're back, baby, for our pre-drinks ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. And I'm joined by my friends and yours, the two Thomases. Tommy T, g'day, mate. How you doing?
G'day. Yeah, doing all right.
And Thomas J. Camp with some very exciting news. Campy, how are you?
Hello, gentlemen. Very well, very well. Big smile on my dial this morning.
Oh, and tell us why, Campy.
So I got engaged yesterday, got on one knee and popped the question. She said yes, so that was good. So, yeah, I'm pretty stoked.
Congratulations, mate.
Yeah,
Ripping
cheers.
news.
Well, that's as happy as you'll see me for the rest of the podcast. Back to cynical arsehole.
We would expect, your fiance would expect nothing less, Campy.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
No, it's good.
Congratulations. That's probably the big thing that happened over the break. Tommy T, what happened in the break for you except for doing your usual going dark and not replying to any of my messages?
I went even darker in the mid-season break, didn't I? Just went radio silence. Nah, because we're still in lockdown over here, so work for me gets a bit busier, but that's fine. It was a good opportunity to switch off from Formula One and motorsport completely, but I'm back and I'm excited because we're at my favourite track.
Yes, we are.
Can we just take a moment just to say every year how beautiful this track is?
It is the best track.
And Eau Rouge, geez, that gets me going every time I see it. Even though it was on the wet on Friday night, I was like, this is still good.
Yes, correct. And now people are asking whether or not that corner's safe after the W Series massive pile up. And
just learn how to drive and they'll be fine.
Well, I mean, the track hasn't changed. Well, the track has changed a little bit over a period of time, but I agree. Let's leave the track. I mean, they're full sending, right? They're all very brave in W Series and Lando and the rest of them. And think back to Perez a couple of years ago where he had that massive twitch coming up up the hill and almost losing it. Oof, that's interesting indeed. Well, that's very good, lads. And I apparently am doing some other motorsport, but if you don't know, then you don't know. Righto.
Give him a plug, Tommy. Give him a plug.
Mate, he's been doing plenty. James is on about 17 different motorsport podcasts at the moment. He's the busiest man in motorsport right now. No, so James has been doing the Extreme E podcast with our good mate, Michael Lemonardo, and he's got a full-on weekend this weekend, haven't you, mate? It's going to be you're going to be pretty much attached to that microphone full time. Full time.
Yeah. As much as I'm attached to a screen, to be honest, because after this, I will catch up on MotoGP qualifying and the remainder of Extreme E qualifying, and then we'll just see the races. Very conveniently, MotoGP starts at 10 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, which is good because it means I don't have to watch the pre-race of Formula One stuff because they're going to go absolutely George bloody fanboy nuts and it is going to kill me and I can't deal with it. So that's going to be good. And then Formula One will start. And then unfortunately, Extreme E starts halfway through Formula One. So anyway, it's going to be a whole time. I'm very excited.
Bloody
killing it.
Yeah,
just kept going.
Just kept going.
As you would.
What was that? Well, we're used to being upside down, aren't we, Australians? Yes. Anyway, that's a different podcast. If you want to listen to my thoughts on Extreme E, go listen to that. But let's talk about Formula One. Look, Tommy T, you had a good idea before we started recording. It is roughly halfway through the season. We don't really know. We know pretty much all of the tracks, don't we, except for one TBC, which could potentially be Qatar, which that will be interesting from a MotoGP point of view. That's an interesting track, Campy, isn't it? For straight line speed, we know the Ducatis do quite well down the main straight. What does that mean for Formula One? Who bloody knows?
I think it'll be an overpowered DRS section, in my humble opinion. It'll be a bit like the back straight in China, towards the end of the race, where it's just if you've got fresh tyres on and DRS open, there's no chance of defending. So, I mean, cool. We get to see another track.
And Brazil is somehow on the list still, so that's not going to happen. So there's going to be, and Mexico, so that's not going to happen either. So there's at least going to be a double header in Coda. Let's hope that would just make sense.
We should do Coda backwards. That would be cool.
Can you do Coda backwards?
Do the T1 in reverse down the hill.
I think you could.
Campy, that is actually very
it depends
good.
on the runoffs, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could because just the way the track layout's set up, it's got everywhere. There's massive
runoffs and stuff.
Massive runoffs and safety barriers for the existing track. But why not do it backwards? That'd be rad.
Why not? Well, as Campy's race director, that would maybe a thing. We'll be firing Michael Massig. In fact, Seb Vettel fired Michael Massig yesterday when I had a conversation with him and said, well, listen, mate, you're out of the bee farm. You're not welcome back here, which is good because he's been listening to what we've been saying for ages. All right, let's talk about predictions then for the rest of the season. Tommy T, do you want to start us off with 2 or 3?
Well, I'm just doubling down on mine, and Max Verstappen is going to walk away in the second half of this season. I think he's just seeing him in the media. He's very confident. He's not getting into the politics games. He's not kind of playing these mind games with Lewis. He's just coming out. He's going, I'm just going to pants you for the rest of these weekends coming up, and he's going to win the championship pretty comprehensively, I would think. I think it's going to help having his teammate re-signed and that kind of screw it away as well. So that's good. And I think Red Bull will probably win the constructors as well. I'm going to double down on both of those. So that's probably 2. And then I think we're going to see Daniel, well, this could come sooner than later, Daniel get a position over Lando and get a podium. Yeah, that's it. You could see Daniel get a podium.
Yes, well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Campy, what do you think? What have any thoughts ahead of the rest of the season?
Yeah, look, Danny Rick will get a win this year, I think.
A win?
He'll get a win this year, yeah. The car's got some, the car's truly capable, and let's just hope it's one of these tracks like, let's say we get a Monza from last year. Yeah. Repeat, where Gasly wins. That guy just shouldn't be winning anything. But I think Danny Rick will get a win this year, and it'll vindicate all the haters, and it'll just give him some confidence. I think Lewis will go on to win the championship. I don't think he'll win it on track. I think Red Bull will lose it for Verstappen off track somehow. Ooh. Sorry, not off track. I think they'll make decisions in the races which compromise Max getting points. I think Max I think hands down he'd win it if it was only due to on track stuff. But I think this is a team game. I don't think Red Bull. I mean, they've been smart this year at times, but it just seems like most of the time for me, Mercedes just off track are winning that battle by a mile. So I think that's how it'll happen. And I think Bottas will stay at Merc next year. Ooh. I think they'll give Russell another year down in Williams, and Bottas will get a chance next year. And I think that will be at Lewis Hamilton's directive. I don't think he wants George Russell coming into his team. And to even, I think that's just what Lewis wants. So Lewis will get what he gets. So what he wants. Sorry.
That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Because there is some value still with Lewis Hamilton saying that, but also Toto Wolff is no idiot, and he has to be looking long-term for the team and saying, well, that's fine, Lewis, but also, you're not here for long-term. George Russell is our future, potentially. Well, he is in the Mercedes Junior sense. So does he listen to Lewis anymore, or does he just say, mate, I'm the boss. If you don't want to drive for Mercedes, okay, see you later. That's fine.
No way they're looking at the future when Lewis Hamilton's still in the team. He's delivered them 6 world championships.
I agree completely.
Rosberg won 1, 2. Like, he gets to make these decisions. So
I would agree with you, but with regulation changes and Toto being Toto, I reckon it's been done already, which is why I reckon we'll know in the next couple of weeks that George is going up.
I just wonder, you risk losing George completely if you're them, if you wait a whole another year.
But if you look at the narrative that Lewis has been playing in the media the last couple of years, it's no longer about, it's about championships. He doesn't particularly care about pole positions, fastest laps. He cares about race wins, but they're just part and parcel of the car he's in. He's been talking about his legacy in the sport and how he wants to leave the sport, and he wants to leave it in a better place. You look at all his off-track stuff that he's doing with diversity and equality and, his political stuff, and he ain't going to let that be tainted by a young junior driver coming in for a year and making him look second rate or average, even at the chance of that. He controls this team, rules it with an iron fist with Toto, and they are two together. George Russell's still young. He's going to be around for the next decade. Don't worry about when he gets into the seat. It's like if he gets into that seat, it's a win. He'll be in it either not next year, the year after. Like it's hands down easily. If Lewis doesn't win a world championship next year, he'll retire and go into the cruise into the sunset with a big legacy, and that's what he wants. There's no way they're going to let George Russell compromise him.
Well, I think Sergio Perez, for me, is the one to watch for the rest of the season. As you said, Tommy, just before, signed again for 2022, which is good news for him. He'll be very happy that's done well and truly before the end of the season, and then therefore after the season, like this time or this year, going into Red Bull. And that, I think, will just build his confidence because he knows where he stands. He's not threatened necessarily, but doesn't have to sort of be thinking, okay, well, is Albon going to come back and take this seat? It's unfortunate for Alex. I think that signs his fate now. I think he's testing for IndyCar, and that's probably where he's going to head. Had a good result in DTM the other day, so that's good for him. But I think Sergio I think that's where he's looking, probably chasing down Lando for that third position overall in the driver's standings, and certainly where he's starting this race. That's probably going to be easier for him. Certainly in that machinery, in the same machinery.
What do you
Max,
reckon Dr. Helmet thought of that re-signing? Do you reckon he was a bit opposed, or do you reckon he was okay with it? It's hard to know.
I reckon he orchestrated it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think if you were Helmet, and I would be sorry for your loss if you were, you'd be thinking, what is the most consistent outcome that I can have for Max Verstappen next year? And the answer is Sergio, without any shadow of a doubt, because if you look at any other talent in the paddock, they're going to have to get their head around the car, around the team. We know how well Sergio got on with his team. Like his mechanics, his crew were really sad to see him leave what was Racing Point, now Aston Martin, last year. So I think that's, there's all of these things combined. And Christian rates him. Christian's rated him for a long time. So I think he would have gone into bat for him. So anyway, that's my prediction is he comes up. I'm with you though. I think Max Verstappen will walk away with this, and certainly because they're just looking at the next couple of races and they come thick and fast at us, and especially the next race in the Netherlands, which we won't actually be able to see the track because there'll be that many orange smoke canisters going off. He'll know it though, because he's the only one I think that's driven it in a Formula One car in recent years. So there you go. That's what I think. All right, lads, let's talk about the practice sessions ahead of qualifying, because it was good to be back in Spa. Let's just say that, as you said, Tommy T, fantastic track, the Ardennes, big yes from me. And, well, I don't think Munnis even mentioned the weather, which is why it's been raining.
He's sacked. You're sacked, Munnis.
What a dud. Must be an Irish thing.
But we had people exploring track limits and losing a little bit as well. Max and Charles basically in the same section of the track, losing it and red flagging the sessions from a practice point of view. Tommy T, what do you think of that overall kind of lead up?
Yeah, my favourite bit was Kimmy on the pit entry just hitting the wall in practice one. Kimmy's lost it. He's either drunk at the wheel or he's just given up. He's tapped out. It was great. Obviously, the conditions are changing like they were in Melbourne. Just minute to minute, it was up and down all over the place. There was sun for 10 seconds. And then the thing about this track is it actually drains really well and dries fairly quickly in comparison to others. So it can be drenched and then all of a sudden it's dry in some spots. And it'd be really hard to navigate. And as a team, you're trying to gather all this information. So I like that aspect of what we get at Spa because you can't over-prepare. We can't let the laptops come in and just dominate the racing. There's so much more kind of feel to it than other tracks because of these kind of factors. So it's made for an interesting qualifying as we're about to talk about and hopefully an interesting race too.
There seems to be two climates here as well. Up the top of the hill and the back end of the racetrack is completely different end to where the pits are and the front straight no rouge. So that always throws up lots of variables in changing conditions. So, it might be good to go on dries at one stage of the race, but the other end of the track, it's still raining, it's still wet. So, look, let's see what happens. It's going to be an interesting race, but I think the race will be one off track in the garage this evening, not so much on track.
Yeah. I think there's a lot about downforce, isn't there? A lot about wing choice.
It's an interesting compromise because you've got two such long straights in the Kemmel Straight and the, what's the other one down the bottom? I don't know what it's called. It's not Kemmel either. What am I talking about?
Other straight.
Brain fart. Sorry, I'm a bit excited. I had a good day yesterday. So. No, it'll be interesting to see. There's that interesting compromise. Sector 2's, you need big downforce to make the time up, but you don't want to put too much downforce on because then you're a sitting duck on these long straights. So, fine compromise. I think it's going to be a wet race tonight, so hopefully it dries and we get some dry running. But we may see what we saw in Imola last year with drying track and the wet tyres actually turn into slicks. So they don't need to pit. And you may have issues with warming up tyres getting into optimum temperature ranges just because of the speeds you're driving and the track being greasy and wet. So lots of variables tonight. I think it'll be one off track though. I think it's the garage that will win the drivers tonight. So.
Well, we know that certain cars like the Ferraris were trying to set themselves up for potentially a drier race today, which is why they're flailing a little bit down the back there.
Yeah.
And the same with Alpine, because we know last year with Renault and Danny Rick chasing down Max for his first podium in the final lap, that this is a track that suits that kind of mentality, that kind of car setup. So it was no surprise to see both Alpines and Ferraris flailing around towards the back in qualifying. Okay, let's talk about qualifying now, and we'll bring this up because I think it's worth having a conversation. We sort of mentioned at the beginning, do we need to adjust the track for safety at all coming up through Eau Rouge? No. Tommy?
No.
I think you could maybe put a runoff in or something, but don't change the track. Yeah.
Insane.
Go on, Campy. Go on. We interrupt the rest of us and then stop talking.
Sorry, I heard Tommy talking. Geez, this internet quality on your end's terrible. But Massey's got to listen to the drivers. I mean, before Lando had his crash, he was saying yes, red flag it. Vettel was saying the same things. There were some other drivers not. So I think you're safety cautious at every other decision you make. If drivers, even one driver says red flag it, you should red flag it. I mean, it's a shame, but in saying that, I think Lando Norris's mistake. I don't think his car was anywhere near in the direction it should have been going up that. Nowhere near the optimal racing line. I actually think he copped a bit of rear end going through the bottom of Eau Rouge, and when he was going up to Radion, and it spat him out. Like the angle on that approach when he's going through Radion was what.
Well, Brundle called it early, didn't he? He was like, "That's wrong."
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that was his racing line coming into it. But, you got to listen to the drivers at some stage, and we're safety conscious, so double down on your safety conscious. Not that we want to see that as fans.
Yeah.
But
I think it was
he hasn't had, since he's been race director, since Charlie Whiting sadly passed away, we're constantly talking about him, and we shouldn't be talking about him as a race director.
Yeah.
He should just go unseen and not doing his job.
Yeah.
It's a real shame.
I liked
It just seems that when problems and variable situations happen, he's always on the wrong end of the decisions he's making.
Yeah. So Louis Delatraz, I think it was, posted a comment. He was saying, we don't want to change the track, but you need to have a safer runoff because at the moment, all these crashes are bouncing back into track. And that's the issue with where that kind of part is. It's also on a hill, so I don't really know what you do with that runoff. But whether you put that super sticky kind of stuff that we see around in the French Grand Prix, more gravel, I don't know, like change the barrier composition to something else that cushions rather than just shoots you back into track. Because that's we've seen too many in that spot be spat out back across track and just like pinballing basically. So I think that's what the drivers are getting at. They love Eau Rouge, but the risk is too high when it goes wrong, I think.
I also love Eau Rouge, and a shout out to the Formula One team for putting a camera inside Fernando Alonso's helmet.
Yes,
the eye cam.
It just looked like it was nothing to him.
Yeah,
it's such a spectacle to see, isn't it? When you're looking outside the car and seeing the compression and everything else. To him, it was just blink.
Yeah,
he's already tracking along the straight. So, look, interesting thought. But of course, I mean, Lando crashing out was pretty full on. Good that he was okay, but let's
learn to adjust your driving style in variable conditions, Lando. Jeez, mate,
yeah, but I reckon good full send. He went for it. So I'm happy the fact that he tried to do it well.
Yeah, he was the quickest by far, wasn't he?
Lots of water and everything else. Quick. But look, let's also do a big shout out to the world's biggest gentleman in Formula One, Seb Vettel, who stopped alongside him to check that he was okay. Which is
berated Massey over the radio at the same time, which we love.
Yeah, as I said, went and fired Massey shortly afterwards as the king of Formula One.
Maybe that Seb post-career can go do race direction. I'm into it.
That'd be interesting, actually.
I'd be way too biased when something happens to Lewis Hamilton.
I'm here for it. Seb, in you go.
I prefer that. Big thumbs up.
Shitty German attitude to come out.
No, I'm here for it. But of course, that meant there was only one McLaren left on the track, guys, and it was. And we didn't see any of his qualifying.
None of it.
No. And what we did see is Lewis Hamilton plodding around in the rain. Thanks again, TV director, for
seriously.
We didn't even see George Russell's lap. No, the most of it. Like, come on, dude.
We saw it in that little
see the purple
picture in picture. We saw that was it.
We didn't even get Danny Rick's timing sectors up. So at the end of Q3, I thought, oh, geez, has he finished yet? And I'm like, I couldn't see the checkered flag next to his name, so I knew he was still out on track. And I'm like,
but Crofty said he pitted. Crofty's like, oh no, Sainz and Ricardo are finished.
Q2 and Q3, like, no, Crofty got it wrong.
You're finished.
Yeah, dope. Because I was watching heavily because I was like, oh, he's missed it. But I was watching him on the driver tracker GPS, and you could see he was building up to get over the line with 10 seconds to go. Yeah. So I was very confident at that point. I was like, Crofty, you friggin' idiot. Like, how can you not know that?
It's gotten worse. I would have thought the summer break would have given him some ability to reset and learn the drivers' names because he really struggles with that. So, but he hasn't. Hooray!
Can we just talk about Danny Rick's improvement from Q1 to Q3 to the last lap that he did?
Yeah, I was exactly that's where I was going. Campy gone.
Absolutely. You can tell when Norris drives his car, he's confident in the dry, and he goes out in the wet and he puts these stonking laps together because he's confident in it. You see the difference between the two and the confidence in the car when they get in the wet. Danny Rick was 4 seconds off, and he's still struggling and coming to grips with that car. I know over the break, Seidel made a comment saying that, we didn't expect, when Daniel came in, we didn't expect the pace deficit. But what we did know really early on is that what Daniel wants in a F1 car and what we provide on track are polar opposites of the spectrum. So anyway, but the growth and the improvement that Danny Rick showed just in 3 qualifying sessions to put a lap together like that to be a second off Max Verstappen in the wet, I think just goes to how good this guy is and how adaptable he can be. There's more pace in the car. And in his interview afterwards, he was still shitty. He said, it was great improvement through everything. Next time I get in the car in the wet, I've made improvements. I'm getting better, but I'm not happy because there's still more pace in the car, clearly. So good attitude from DR.
Big fan.
I like it. I like what I'm saying.
Did you guys get to see his little one-on-one with Max at the Skypad? That was really good as well. No. It was great. It was good to see the boys back together for a bit of banter. So go back on KO now that you've signed up, Campy, for your free trial. Go watch the start of qualifying. It's really good. But they're talking about
Foxtel. Oh my god!
Here we go.
I didn't watch the thing live last night. I had other commitments that I was doing, so I went on. I got up at 7 o'clock this morning, put the replay on. Number one, the file format made it fuzzy and visioning, so I couldn't even watch the screen. So I was like, I'm just going to have to watch commentary. Anyway, I got to the point. I only got to see the end of Q2, and then the recorded version of qualifying on Foxtel didn't show the rest of it. I'm like, you got to be joking me here. So then, in utter infuriation, I had to get on to KO and pay $25 for a monthly subscription to watch qualifying. I'll tell you what, I'm shitty. Someone should reach out from Foxtel and give me a voucher for a year for the absolute bollocks that I put up with on a week-to-week freaking basis trying to watch motorsport. Jeez. Anyway, keep going, Tommy.
Oh, it was great. No, I was just saying, it was great to see the boys back together. You can tell that whatever happened previously is all gone. And they actually kind of miss hanging out together, Max and Danny. They were great. But you saw all the traffic that Daniel was copying. You saw that he was faster through sections than Max was, even in sectors of that lap. Really? Yeah, it was really good to see. And even Max was complimentary in certain spots. He's like, yeah, that's great. He's like, you could just tell that Daniel, when he was commenting, he was like, I'm trying to preempt things that this car's doing that I don't like. That's why I'm slower, if that makes sense. So he's trying to minimize all the snaps and things that he doesn't like. So he's driving more cautiously, trying to protect the car from doing random stuff. So he's not confident. He doesn't like it. He's really uncomfortable with how that car's set up, but he's doing the best he can and he's getting better at it. So fingers crossed he can put it together tonight. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you're right. He is working really, really well on this. And of course, he would have had a good break as well, just relaxing, being in LA. If you haven't listened to the Smartless podcast with him as an interview, very, very good. Please go and listen to that. It's a much better podcast than this one because it's got much better people on it. But it was very good to listen to that whole thing. Also, well, let's talk about George Russell because this was ridiculous.
That's
but as Danny Rick
lap.
said in his post-quali interview, right time, right place, right sections of the lap at the right time meant that you can connect stuff together. George put 2 purple sectors in a Williams, which is ridiculous. Campy, talk to me about this success for the team, I suppose.
Yeah, it's good for Williams. Again, he's confident in his car. We look at the previous races this season and the gains that Williams have made on track. He is driving superbly confident at the moment. And when you get into the wet, he can do things in that car that his teammate can't because he's not as confident. So great for George, great for his confidence. He's doing all the right things to get that seat at Mercedes next year. Bit like Perez last year. Everyone in the world was going, Red Bull just signed Perez. The guy's done nothing wrong. And throughout the year, just continued to get results and show people what he's capable of. So he's doing all the right things. Do I read too far into it and do I think he's better than what he is? Well, I'm still not sold on George Russell. For me, he's only driving a Williams. And, I mean, I think he'll make the step to a top car quite well when he gets there, but I still don't really know what kind of driver he's had. He's had pretty rubbish teammates his whole career, and put him up against a 4-time world champion or a Danny Rick or a Max Verstappen, and we'll really get to understand how this guy is. But great lap yesterday and should be congratulated.
Yeah, absolutely. It also means that Mercedes do have 2 cars in the top 3. Just not the one that they were expecting. Tommy, a bit of rear gunner action likely here from George because into turn 1 and then down into Eau Rouge. Is he going to hold up the rest of the paddock as much as he can?
I don't know. Yeah, to be honest, I know Campy's all guns blazing for VB, but I reckon that's just about sealed his fate to come out in those conditions. To George to do that kind of stuff, I reckon they'll tell Lewis to get stuffed because there's a bit of a future there. And I think they're going to have to start going, we've got Max to compete with. We've got Charles Leclerc. We've got all these kind of young drivers. We've got Lando now, seemingly. We need to have a young driver for the future. We can't just rest on Lewis forever. And Bottas isn't part of that future quite clearly as well. So I reckon that's a pretty damning result to get out-qualified by a guy in a way worse car.
Yep.
In those conditions when you are supposed to be kind of the consummate professional, as Campy would say, in the wet, in all those conditions and extracting the best out of that car. So, but you're right. I think there could be some kind of, I don't know, looking after his future teammate in some way by just clogging up Eau Rouge, like you're saying, and just letting Lewis sneak through or backing up the pack. It could work well for Max, to be honest, though. It could backfire.
Well, as you say, he's got clear air in front of him, and at this point, a slower car between him and his championship rival. So really, it means that he can potentially sail away pending any accidents or pit stop issues or whatever, that he can build a gap almost immediately. And we know Max Verstappen is the king at building gaps at the moment. As soon as he gets into that fresh air, he is, see you later, mate.
Yeah.
On his way to a victory, which would be good to see. But of course, Lewis starting in 3rd. So again, Williams outqualified both Mercedes, outqualified a 7-time world champion. Ridiculously good drive. Even after the race, after the qualifying session had finished, and I don't know who the Williams team principal is. It changes every 3 weeks. I'm not going to bother learning this guy's name either. But came onto Sky and said, really happy for him. I think, after that result, Mercedes will have made their decision. Toto will have made the decision. Of course, we want to keep him. But, with a drive like that, I'd be taking him up to Mercedes. We hope that he goes up to a Mercedes. So, insert team principal name here saying that, then that's a good thing. For George, and it's great for the team. The mechanics deserve it. Like all the hard work, and Campy will say this, all the hard work that Claire Williams put into this team to set it up for the right, fact now to be able to be qualifying where they're qualifying is good news. That's what we want for the sport, right? We want a Williams resurgence. I'm here for it. Let's do it. Nick Latifi to win World Championship next year. Okay. DR, as we said, in 4th, which means he starts directly behind George. Campy, what do you think we can sort of see from DR off the start tonight?
Oh, look, I'll look at the start he got last time in Turkey in the rain. I mean, that was a stonking start. I think it was a better start than anybody else, in my opinion. Prove me wrong.
All right, Snuffleupagus, just settle down there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think Danny will be cautious into turn one this time. I would hope that someone gets into a tangle, like Max and Lewis take themselves out. Jeez, that would be a great headline, wouldn't it?
Again.
It'd be great. I think Danny will be pretty cautious. He just needs to get the start. And he'll know after the first and second phase of his start where he's got a good one and what he's going to do. But I think he'll be looking to jump into that third position. He'll be looking to jump Russell on track up the straight after Eau Rouge so that, he doesn't get bogged behind a car that doesn't have the race pace. So if he can get into some clean air behind Lewis and Max, if that's the way it happens, then he can put time on everybody else while they're struggling to get past Russell. I think that's what his ideal will be. But you never know. He could break really late and come out with the lead to it. I mean, he'll be having eyes for it because in the wet, you never know what happens.
Yeah.
Max may be in it. You just look. He'll know after the first and second phase of his start what he's he'll have a plan in his mind. He'll have 3 or 4 situations what happens, but he'll know straight away.
Tommy T, he starts on the outside, which means it's slight danger if someone yeets themselves up the middle. If we bloody watch Lance Stroll, where's Stroll starting? 15th, they should be okay. Yeeting himself through. There is a lot of, in the wet, there is a good line to go around the outside Campy, isn't there? Not just to hug that corner. So, yes, as you say, good.
Yeah, that corner, the apex is not.
Yeah, he can slingshot himself around. I think that's good news. But Tommy T, do you think that he'll get past George coming into turn one? Or do you think he'll leave it to take him up over Radion?
It's so bloody hard because you want him to have the aggressive mindset, but it's going to be hard for him to not just think, I can do so much good for my will with the team and where I'm placed just to get a good result and not risk it all and potentially bin it. Because that would be the worst outcome, to be honest, I think he's going to be a slightly more risk adverse than he'd want to be just for that kind of current standing of the team. But, man, if the opportunity's good, I think he'll go for it. I think he's not going to go for less than a 50-50. He can't risk it. But I think he's going to be, like Campy said, it's going to be on strategy as well. So he's going to milk the absolute most out of those tyres. And maybe you've just got to take the risk and switch if it's dry earlier than anyone else and try and capitalise and just be super smart with those kind of parts that are still in your control as a team. And let's just hope that they don't compromise him and do something stupid with Lando and then switch him late or something dumb. Because I can see Lando coming through the grid quite well from 14th. I think he ends up after his gearbox penalty. But I just hope they don't do something stupid like that we've seen in the past because he's got Sebastian behind him. So who knows? Sebastian could get a ripping start or he could spin off and cause havoc. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's a shout out to 2 drivers that I was going to say is Seb Vettel in 5th and Pierre Gasly out of the bin in 6th. Both of these guys really significantly outperforming their teammates. Seb Vettel's teammate is Stroll, starts, as I said, in 15th.
What a dud.
And Tsunoda starts in 17th. So there is a real distinct difference in terms of class of drivers in those teams.
Tsunoda's a rookie, though. But Stroll, that was pathetic. He didn't even get to cross the line for another lap. What a dud.
Yeah. Classic. Yeah, but again, he doesn't have to perform in a team that your dad owns. So,
jeez. And then he cracks it at the team like it's their fault. It's like, mate, you're the biggest muppet. I hate the way he shifts blame. It really does my head in. He's classic rich boy, everyone else is to blame other than me kind of attitude, and it really pisses me off.
You are not wrong, my friend. Not wrong indeed. But Sergio Perez in 7th, Ocon in 8th, Leclerc after. So Norris did technically qualify in 9th after Bottas's penalties and now his penalty. Anyway, there's a whole stack of other people.
Which order do the penalties go? Ugh.
Just go and have a look. But Ferrari didn't have a good time either, did they? And let's talk about what we should be watching for in the race tonight for us and today if you're listening to this in Europe. But Ferrari really have a lot of work to do to come back through. We know, though, Carlos Sainz has really been getting himself into a rhythm in this season by not potentially performing quite so well in qualifying, but making the most of other people's mistakes and getting some good strategy. Tommy T, what do you think we can expect from Ferrari for the race?
I think they both have good starts. We know that power unit has good straight line speed. So they're going to be able to capitalize, hopefully, because everyone's going to be slower in the corners and downforce will play less of a part in the wet. So I could see them jumping early and then trying to hold on to those positions. But we've seen Charles Leclerc come from behind before. He's not really the most tactful guy. He can just cause absolute havoc and just take everyone out and risk it all. But I think I would pick Sainz to do the better of those drivers and definitely get deep into the points.
What do you reckon, Campy?
Max v. Lewis for me.
Good. You didn't want to expand on that at all. Just one sentence.
Sorry, I must have just cut out.
We'll go with one sentence. So Max versus Lewis, yes, of course, as we said, there's potential for lap one drama. Or they're going to be uber cautious around each other, not really noting what's going to happen.
Sorry, boys, I can't hear you. Not sure what's happening here.
Well, we'll continue, Tommy T. Lando's fight back, I think, also is important to see as well. I mean, he starts, as you say, around that 15th position.
Yeah.
He's got Bottas around him as well as the Ferraris and Fernando Alonso. And we know that Fernando Alonso is a king at defending, isn't he? Especially after Hungary. That was phenomenal. Hopefully we get to see a more helmet cam from him. But Lando really, I mean, we know he's quick, but can he fight through the field?
I think that car is pretty well positioned this week with his current form and the way that car's set up for him. Like, he was showing his form before he crashed out, to be honest. Like, he probably was going to put it close to pole, if not on the front row. Yeah. So I've got no worry with his pace. It's going to be, the conditions going to be okay for passing and making maneuvers. I think he's going to get back into the points fairly quickly, though, based on who's in front of him and how quick he was. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past the old salty veterans to get in his way, that's for sure. Because in the wet, like, you need to be uber confident and like supremely skilled. It's not just, there's confidence, but then there's also like, you need to know the limits and what the risk is by pushing that little bit further. Whereas the rookies, we're going to see spin out. I reckon Mazepin's a guarantee. I think Tsunoda's going to be in the gravel. I'll put more money on that than anything in this race, to be honest, is that those rookies, 2 of the 3, are going to definitely spin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited for Fernando. I think he signed as well for an additional year in for Alpine. I think he's going to stay around forever, and I'm here for it.
He's here for Kimi's record of most race starts, isn't he? That's all he wants now.
Kim, let's be honest, Kimi's not re-signing for next year, so he's got a couple of years to catch up after a 2-year break for Fernando.
Well, Fernando just passed Rubens, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did
this race.
Yeah.
So second most,
but he's also just such a great guy. Anyway, I'm really happy that he was back. I didn't think he would be last year, but I am really stoked that he's back. The weather, of course, is really important. Campy, if we've got you back, what do you think in terms of how this plays out? If it's mixed conditions, does that suit Danny Rick better than if it was just wet or just dry?
Not sure it suits him either way. He's in one of those positions. He's got to have the pace to get on the podium tonight. I think he's got the pace, but it'd be interesting to see what the cars around him do. That's what I talked about before. George Russell, starting behind Danny Rick and then not having the pace in the car to run with the top 3, and that'll build the buffer for Danny Rick to do it. But there will be incidents too, so I think stay out. Like, when there's a crash, just stay out because it'll probably get red flagged if it's in the rain.
Yeah.
I think that's just stay out and go for as long as you can on the tyres and then react if the track's dry. And if you've got the gap up the front, well, don't compromise. Wait a lap. You might only lose 7 or 8 seconds, but hey, you should have that gap by the time these things happen. But I think it'll be greasy all night.
Yeah.
I think it'll just be on and off, and I don't think we'll get to dry tyres at all. I think it'll just be I think it'll be intermediates for 75% of the race and then wet.
Which is interesting because I'm not sure who's actually got fresh inters left. because I'm pretty sure Merck used all of their Inter allocation. And all of them are spent. So they're going to be using used for everyone. So it's going to be super interesting to see who's actually been smart about their tyre allocation. We saw them burning through in practices because that means you get fresh ones and stuff. So, yeah, I'm not sure. It'll be very interesting to find out before, but watch that as well, because if you've got someone on older Inters, they're after a couple laps, they're spent. Like they're cooked.
Well, most teams did save tyres, and that's why George Russell qualified so well as well. He had a brand new set of tyres for that last lap he did, whereas everyone else was on used. So, yeah, you're right. The tyre discussion will be interesting. And but we've seen what happened with tyres previously. They can turn into slicks if you run them long enough. So
accident, Pirelli just made like a magic tyre.
Yeah.
It is an accident by them because they're not doing anything on purpose.
The other thing I was going to say quickly before I dropped out was the constructors for third with Ferrari and McLaren.
Yeah,
I think
neck and neck.
That is going to be what we watch for the rest of the year, and I think it's going to be up to Sainz and Ricciardo and how well they drive in the second half of this year, which determines the outcome for the constructors. I think Lando will continue to perform, and Leclerc will get points as well. I mean, but Leclerc and Sainz are pretty equal as well. So I think if Danny Rick can sort his results out, which he has this weekend so far, I think they'll get that spending boost which they need, and that'll be be good for Danny Rick.
I should have turboed Danny.
Oh, I turboed Lando like an idiot.
I don't even remember what my team is. It's been that long since I checked
bloody Tsunoda in there, and he's got 1 point.
You idiot.
Useless.
Do you think, boys, and last point before we finish up, do you think if Danny Rick gets a podium today that we can finally put the haters and the naysayers to bed properly and they'll shut up? Or do you think they'll just ride him unless it's not a win?
They're chasing clicks, mate. I don't think it's going to change until...
No, I don't think it'll change.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it kind of just, at least in his mind, at least he stops listening and caring about what people say, which I don't think he does, but to some degree, you start listening to some stuff, don't you? You can't ignore it forever.
We can't ignore the F1 pit lane reporters asking you the same question each week.
Jeez, they're idiots, aren't they?
And the Lando lovers are all little English, dweeby nerds that,
Sorry, fan base.
There it is. Sorry, listener.
Well,
lucky it's just the three of us talking, mate, and no one else is listening.
I don't care about anyone else's opinion. That's clear. So they're all squids anyway.
True.
Not squibs. Squid.
Thanks. Yes, thanks for quality.
Did you watch Harry Potter to figure out what a squid was?
Mate, believe it or not, I watched the last one.
Did ya?
Because I was like, I'll check this out. And then I realised it was in 2 parts. I was like, geez, this movie.
Did you watch just part 2?
No, I watched part 1 and 2.
That would have been even better if you watched
it was all right. I didn't really get it.
Start with the ending. I didn't really get it. What a surprise. Like in a 7-part series.
Well, I actually thought, I should watch this from the start. Put the first one. I'm like, this is a bloody kids movie. I'm not watching this. So I went straight to the last one. It was all right.
James, can we start a new podcast? Campy watches films.
I have the thing I have time for is more podcasts.
Yes, that's true.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
Absolutely.
All right, we've got an acclaimed host now, so that's good for us. Tom.
Alleged international acclaimed motorsport podcaster James Baldwin.
Have you got your tick yet on?
Yeah, where's your blue
on
check?
my verification.
That's all we've been hearing about on text messages. I still haven't got my verification tick. It is.
That's all he wants.
He
wants to be verified on Twitter. That's all he wants.
Slander and not true, Your Honour. Mr.
Bollocks.
and Mrs. Speaker. All right. Well, lads, thanks very much for that. Hey, listen, as I said before, thanks for listening to this episode. If you are also a little bit bored this week, we reviewed the 1989 Suzuka Grand Prix. Tommy T had hair. We were still called the Oz F1 show. And I did a full race review in under a lap's time, which we completely forgot about, and then said in the podcast, we're going to do this every race, and then promptly forgot about it. So potentially might do that tomorrow in the fastest lap. We'll see what happens. Tommy T will remind me. But thank you to you for listening and for watching. If you're on YouTube as well, look, thank you for subscribing and doing all that sort of other stuff. I know it doesn't take much to do it, but it is a real commitment. Campy doesn't even know how to access the internet, let alone on YouTube. Clearly is a result of him today. So thank you for that. And don't watch the race build-up. Watch MotoGP instead, and then listen to Lakeside Drive's MotoGP podcast as well.
Cracking MotoGP race tonight.
It's going to be great. Silverstone.
Sell me on it. Give me, why should I watch?
Munners.
Because you'll actually see passing. You'll actually see passing. You've got an Aussie that'll probably get a result, unlike tonight. Sorry
the
about
true
this.
thought comes out. DR's on for a podium. Let's talk about MotoGP. Jack Miller's amazing.
He's
DR
just
squid.
swapped helmets, hasn't
Put
he,
him in the
Campy?
bin. Yeah, I know.
It's Silverstone, so that always produces good racing. It looks like we're going to get some weather tonight also. So multiple conditions, and I love both of them.
I don't know. I'm pretty interested in watching.
I love F1 more.
I'm pretty interested in watching Karun send Michael Schumacher, Mick Schumacher around in Michael's old car. I might have to watch that.
That will be good. Only if you have it on mute and unmute it when Michael's talking or Mick's talking. Well, look, join our Discord as well. Link in the description below.
Karun's commentating on MotoGP tonight too, so that's another good one.
Oh, good.
Show up there.
Huge community on Discord, and shout out to you if you're listening and you're active on there. We really appreciate it. And don't forget to change your fantasy team name. We are choosing a winner at the end of the year with the best name. And it doesn't matter where you finish in the top 3 or not. If you've got the best name, you get some sick merch.
The only fantasy league where the points don't matter.
That sums us up, really, doesn't it? Well, that's it for now. Looking forward to chatting in our race review in only a couple of hours' time. See you then.